They told you feudalism ended centuries ago. Kings fell, castles crumbled, and the world moved on to democracy, free markets, and equal opportunity. But what if the system never actually disappeared? What if it just changed clothes? Because when you strip away the language, the stock tickers, the mortgage agreements, the subscription plans, the structure underneath looks eerily familiar. A tiny class owns almost everything. A massive class rents, borrows, and labors to survive. And in between sits a system so normalized that most people don't even realize they're living inside it.
Feudalism didn't die. It was modernized. And the proof is hiding in plain sight, in your rent check, your student loan, and the balance sheet of every corporation that owns the ground beneath your feet. Welcome to the financial system. Control the money, control the history. And remember, simple is never easy. To understand what feudalism really was, forget the fairy tales. Medieval feudalism was not about castles and knights. It was an economic operating system. The king owned the land. He granted portions to lords in exchange for military service and loyalty. Those lords subdivided land to lesser nobles who leased it to peasants. The peasants, the vast majority of the population, worked the fields, produced the food, built the infrastructure, and in return received the right to exist on land they would never own.
They paid rent in labor, in crops, in loyalty. They couldn't leave without permission. They couldn't rise without patronage. And the entire hierarchy was held together not by law alone, but by the illusion that this was the natural order of things. God ordained the king ordained the Lord ordained your place, and your place was at the bottom. The economic engine of feudalism was extraction. Wealth flowed upward, from labor to landowner, from tenant to title holder, and the people at the base received just enough to keep working. Not enough to accumulate, not enough to leave. Just enough to stay productive and dependent. That was the design. And for roughly 1,000 years across Europe, it worked. Now here's where history gets uncomfortable. Feudalism didn't collapse because people suddenly demanded freedom. It collapsed because it became economically obsolete. The Black Death in the 14th century killed so many peasants that labor became scarce. Survivors could demand higher wages. Trade routes expanded. Cities grew. A merchant class emerged that didn't need land to build wealth. They had capital. And over the next few centuries, feudalism was slowly replaced by something we now call capitalism. Markets replaced manners. Contracts replaced oaths. Money replaced land as the primary source of power. And the promise was clear. In this new system, anyone could rise. Talent, effort, and risk would determine your place, not birth. That was the story. And for a while, parts of it were true. But the deeper you look at how modern economies actually function, the more the old architecture reappears. Start with land. In medieval feudalism, land was the foundation of all wealth and power. Lords owned it. Peasants worked it. Today, the pattern has been rebuilt in modern form. In the United States, institutional investors, corporations, private equity firms, and real estate trusts now own millions of single-family homes. In some American cities, 1 out of every 5 rental properties belongs to a corporate landlord. In the United Kingdom, roughly half of all land in England is owned by less than 1% of the population, a concentration that has barely changed since the Doomsday Book was written in 1086. Nearly 1,000 years, and the ownership map looks almost the same. The peasants are gone, but the tenants are everywhere. Millions of people pay rent every month to entities they will never meet, for homes they will never own, enriching balance sheets they will never see. The manor has been replaced by the portfolio. The lord has been replaced by the algorithm. But land is only one layer. The deeper mechanism of modern feudalism is debt. In the medieval world, peasants owed labor and a share of their harvest to the lord. Today, the average household owes its future income to banks. Mortgages, student loans, car payments, credit cards. The modern citizen is born into a system where borrowing is not optional. It is the price of participation. You cannot get an education without debt. You cannot own a home without debt. In many places, you cannot even get to work without a car loan. And every one of those debts generates interest, a perpetual upward flow of wealth from borrower to lender, from the many to the few, month after month, year after year. That is not a free market. That is a tribute system with better paperwork. Consider the numbers. In the United States alone, total consumer debt has surpassed $17 trillion. Student loan debt exceeds $1.7 trillion. The average American carries roughly $100,000 in debt. These are not isolated statistics. They're the architecture of a system designed so that the majority of people spend their most productive years paying interest on the right to exist. Medieval peasants gave 40 to 60% of their harvest to the Lord. Today, between rent, taxes, loan payments, and insurance, many households surrender a comparable share of their income before they spend a single dollar on themselves. The vocabulary changed, the math didn't. And then there is the question of who controls access. In feudalism, the lord decided who could farm which land, who could sell at market, who could travel. Today, access is controlled by credit scores, algorithms, and platforms. Your ability to rent a home, get a loan, start a business, or even apply for a job is mediated by systems you did not build, cannot see, and are not allowed to challenge. A credit score is, in functional terms, a modern version of a lord's letter of permission. Without it, doors close. With it, you are allowed to participate on terms set by institutions whose primary interest is their own profit. The gatekeepers have changed. The gates have not. The corporate structure itself mirrors feudal hierarchy. At the top sit shareholders and executives, the new lords, who extract profit from the labor of thousands beneath them. Below them, a managerial class enforces productivity and reports upward. At the base, workers produce the actual value, the goods, the services, the code, the logistics. But the wealth generated flows overwhelmingly to the top. Since the 1970s, worker productivity in the United States has risen dramatically, while real wages have barely moved. The gap between what workers produce and what they are paid has widened into a chasm. That surplus, the difference between what labor creates and what labor receives, is extracted by ownership. It is the modern equivalent of the feudal harvest. You work the field, the Lord takes the grain, and you keep just enough to come back tomorrow. Even the gig economy reflects this architecture. Millions of workers now operate as independent contractors, driving cars, delivering food, cleaning homes, using platforms owned by corporations that set the rates, control the access, and collect a cut of every transaction. These workers own nothing. They bear all the risk while the platform extracts value from every ride and every delivery. In medieval terms, this is sharecropping. The peasant provides the labor and the tools, the lord provides the land and takes a percentage. The only difference is that the land is now an app. What makes this system so durable is the same thing that sustained feudalism for a millennium: belief. Medieval peasants accepted their position because the church and the crown told them it was ordained by God. Today, people accept their position because the culture tells them it is the result of personal choice. You're in debt because you chose to go to college. You can't afford a home because you didn't save hard enough. The language of individual responsibility masks a structural reality. The system is designed so that the majority must borrow, rent, and labor in perpetuity, while a small minority collects the returns. That is not a failure of the system. That is the system working exactly as it was built to work. And perhaps the most unsettling parallel is this. In feudal Europe, the church provided the ideology that justified the hierarchy. It told peasants that suffering was noble, that obedience was virtue, that reward waited in the afterlife. Today, consumer culture serves the same function. It tells you that happiness is one purchase away, that debt is the path to the good life, that your worth is measured by what you own.
It keeps people spending, borrowing, and working, not because they are free, but because they believe they are. And that belief is the most profitable product the system has ever created. Because a serf who knows he is a serf might rebel, but a serf who thinks he is free will pay his rent on time every time and never question why.
History doesn't repeat, but the structure endures. The titles change, the technology evolves, the language softens, but the flow of wealth remains the same. Upward, always upward, from those who produce to those who own. The question isn't whether feudalism survived, it's whether you'll recognize it before it costs you everything. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. It's financial system, and history leaves clues. I show you where the money leads.